Well, happy Father's Day. I know that usually we make a bigger deal of Mother's Day, and maybe that's because Mother's Day came first. It began with the peace and reconciliation campaigns for the post-Civil War era. But I love knowing that both of these holidays that, well, now seem somewhat commercialized, well, they began with the goal of bringing peace out of times of conflict. Just a little history. It was during the 1860s that activist Ann Reeves Jarvis helped one very deeply divided West Virginia town plan a Mother's Work Day to bring together the mothers of Confederate and Union soldiers. And that idea spread until in 1914, President Woodrow Wilson made the second Sunday in May a holiday in honor of mothers. The origins of Father's Day began in a similar area in 1908. I don't know what it is about West Virginia. They were very dedicated. But a West Virginia church sponsored the nation's first event in honor of fathers, and it was in memory of 362 men who had died in explosions in the coal mines, working in dangerous conditions to support their families. Now, we are going to talk about the importance of labor unions' works to change those dangerous conditions. We'll do that on Labor Day. Today we'll stay with the fathers. So then it was in 1909 when Sonora Smart Dodd, who was one of 6 children raised by a widower, and she petitioned for an official Father's Day. She had seen a father take on both roles and all the roles of raising children. So she was in Washington State and convinced them to begin the very first statewide Father's Day in 1910, and more states began to follow, but it wasn't until 60 years later when Richard Nixon finally made Father's Day an official federal holiday. Now, some of you know I like to talk about Mother's Day more as Mothering Day, a day to recognize all the people who have mothered us in our lives. And I think this is true of Father's Day as well. We all have a biological father who may or may not have raised us. And we all have people in our lives who have felt at some time like father figures. Individuals, whether male or female or other, those who have helped to provide for our physical needs, taught us how to take care of ourselves and others, sharing skills and wisdom. Now, Kiana Hall shares her story, and I think this fits this point so beautifully. She says, in our home, this day takes on a different meaning. It's a chance to honor and celebrate the diverse people who step in to fill fatherly roles in my son's lives, men who support and guide my boys. And yes, I often think life would be easier with a spouse present to share the load of 2 busy toddlers, not to mention working full-time and juggling graduate studies and contending with one son's epilepsy. But many remarkable uncles are helping me to raise them. Says there's Uncle Fred, a dad of 4 who video calls my boys every Thursday, and Uncle Christian, a truck driver who visits when he's in town playing the role of co-disciplinarian. There's Uncle Theron, their only biological uncle, who guides them through milestones such as potty training and accompanies them for haircuts, while Uncle Tonio engages them in endless pretend play. And then there's Papa, their granddad, who extends the same unconditional love to my sons that he gave to my brothers and me. This village supports me too, for I'm able to show my sons that asking for help is not a weakness but a strength. And they see that family is defined by love and commitment. So these men in their lives teach them about kindness, integrity, and perseverance. So this Father's Day, my heart swells with gratitude to all the people who have stepped in and stepped up. And I say thank you. It's a beautiful example of what we're talking about. And then here, as we think about what it means to be a father or to be fathering, there are many descriptions of fathers in our scriptures. There's many descriptions of God as Father watching over the people of Israel, trying to lead them and teach them how to live together, how to care for one another. As we read these descriptions throughout the Bible, God sometimes seems angry and often frustrated, but always wanting the best for these children who are making their way through this world. But I think the very best description of God in that role of father is in the story that we read this morning. Our story begins with Jesus, who is walking out of worship with all the other religious leaders. He was a rabbi, but they don't know what to make of him. He's too radical, and he keeps trying to change things, and he really does want to change their understanding of God's fathering love. So this parable that Jesus tells them is about a family, about a father with two very different sons. As the story goes, there was a man who had two sons, and as it tends to go, the younger son was maybe a little spoiled and unrealistic about life, and he was sure he could do anything he would put his mind to it if he had enough money, of course. So he decides to set out on his own. If his dad would just give him, that money, he would inherit anyway. And the father who loved him agreed and wrote him a check, or I don't know, whatever they had at the time. And the son took off for Las Vegas and gambled away all his money. Then there was this older, more responsible brother who was probably grumbling under his breath as he watched the kid leave. He might have been thinking, good riddance, that kid never did his share of the work anyway. He's always causing trouble. Now, we all know someone like this younger son, or maybe a family whose child has gone astray, maybe getting caught up in an addiction, maybe seeing jail time or struggling with mental illness or just making poor decisions. We all know about the lost child or the black sheep of a family, the one whose relatives try not to speak of him or her. When they do, it seems to be with judgment. There's always that mixed feeling of anger or frustration or worry, denial, helplessness that follow this person around. And maybe some of us have been that child. Now, it's interesting that this story is usually called the prodigal son, which is a word that's not actually in the scripture. It's added by the editors just to help you find that story that you're looking for. But I think prodigal is a good word because it means more than what we may have been led to assume. Prodigal means spending one's resources freely and recklessly and wastefully in an extravagant manner. So in that sense, this does describe this foolish, irresponsible child. But prodigal can also mean giving something away on a lavish scale, being generous and liberal and extravagant and unsparing with what one has. So now, it sounds like maybe we're describing the father. This father who loved this child enough to let him go. This father who misses him and thinks of him every day. This father who sees this poor, ragged, starving son come back up the road towards home, and he runs very unprofessionally, very unselfconsciously out of the house and down the road to embrace him. He doesn't even listen to the boy's explanations. He doesn't grill him on where that money went or how he plans to repay it. He just hugs him. Gives them some new clothes and starts planning a party. This sounds very much like the story of a prodigal father who loves too much, wastefully, extravagantly, might we say unconditionally? And his father can't wait to share the joy over this child who was lost and now is found, and his happiness is contagious. Or then again, it could be infuriating in the eyes of the older brother, the one who has stayed home and done the hard work, doing his duty and earning his keep and surely earning a party. This is unbelievable. And he's not about to step into the house and watch his undeserving brother get all the attention. He's not going to sit down and share a meal with that guy as if nothing had ever happened, as if he had any right to be accepted back into this family. It is not right and it is not fair. Our parable sheds light on two different reactions to grace. The love and forgiveness and acceptance and support that is freely given, that is what grace is. And one response, well, if you're the one down and out who is to receive it, the response is shock and delight. The other response, when you've been the one working hard and trying your best and playing by the rules, well, it can be resentful. Just goes against the grain. Did it make all your efforts worthless? I think these two responses reflect two dimensions of our very human selves. Sometimes we could be one or the other. Sometimes we feel like the younger brother when we have maybe screwed up or went impulse shopping or misspent some money or made mistakes at work because we weren't paying attention. Maybe we lost our temper and yelled at the kids and feel like the worst parent ever, or we let our addictions, whatever they are, ruin a relationship. Some days we just feel like crap and no one should love us and we don't deserve it. And that is who we are and how we feel. Grace comes like a warm shower washing us clean. Grace feels like the weight of the world being lifted off our shoulders so we can breathe again. Feels like what life was meant to be, being loved and accepted for who we are with no reservations. But I think this story is most important because in the Father, we see God's grace, a love that is greater than anything that we could do wrong. We are assured that God's love never ends. It welcomes every lost child home. But then there still is the older brother. He bears the burden of keeping the rules and being the responsible ones, and sometimes we feel like that son, because being the good child can be a burden. You feel like you have to deliver. You feel like you can't make any mistakes. Sometimes goodness is its own prison. There's no grace in goodness that always has to earn its status. And this resentment stems from desiring what another has. The elder son resents his brother, but the father has just thrown a party for this loser of a brother. The older brother, the loyal one, well, he's lost too. Lost in his need to be right. Alienated, he stands outside the joy of the party. And the cool thing is, this story is told, we don't get an ending. It's obvious that God is the Father who loves unconditionally, who waits with a broken heart for every lost child to come home, to live a life embraced with love in the comfort and care of family. Jodi Picoult, in her novel Mercy, gives the character these beautiful words. She says, 3 months ago, if you had asked me, I would have told you that if you really loved someone, you would let them go. But now I see that I've been wrong. If you really love someone, I think you have to take them back. This is the best storytelling, and Jesus leaves it open. We have to finish it for ourselves. Will the older brother accept the father's invitation and join the party? Will these brothers ever learn to work together? But for us, the story is really about how we understand the character of God. And it's about what fathering looks like. For fathering involves understanding that every child is different, with different personalities and temperaments and different ways of learning. Teaching what you know and then letting them go, and then always being there to pick them up with a warm embrace when life seems to fall apart. And sometimes fathering is helping the over-conscientious child to see that we will all need some prodigal love and grace at some time in our life. So today we express our gratitude for all the people in our lives who have fathered us with love and wisdom, those who have given us the freedom to step out on our own, while we knew that they would always be there, whatever the outcome. Showing by example that no one is left out of God's extravagant, prodigal love. So now let's sing together about God's grace and love.